I'll never forget the way she said it. Casual, almost bored, like she was mentioning grocery plans instead of ripping our marriage apart. I'll see my lover anytime I want. You can't stop me. She stood in our kitchen with her arms crossed, chin lifted like she'd rehearsed the line. The worst part? She looked proud of herself, as if declaring independence instead of announcing betrayal. I didn't shout, didn't slam anything. I just looked at her the way a man looks at the last piece of something he once valued, trying to understand when it broke. Hook! She pushed the boundary. I pushed back with proof. If you like stories where actions speak louder than words, subscribe for more. She waved her hand like I was being dramatic. You should deal with it like a man, she said. This is my life. He's an important part of it now. Important. She said it like she was talking about a therapist or a hobby, not the man she'd been sneaking around with for months. You can't control me, she added. And you sure as hell won't stop me. I didn't try. Not that night. Something in me settled like a final gear clicking into place. I wasn't going to argue with someone who already chose someone else. So I simply said, okay, and went upstairs to pack for my business trip. She thought it meant surrender. Didn't. That night, I lay awake in a hotel room 3 states away, staring at the ceiling. Her words kept replaying, but not the way she intended them. Every sentence she'd thrown was designed to provoke, to make me lash out, to force drama she could blame on me. But she didn't understand the man she married. I don't react. I observe. And I prepare. Before leaving, I had installed new hidden cameras, not because I wanted to catch her cheating. I already knew she was cheating, but because I wanted truth. Facts. Timestamps. Something solid. Something that wouldn't twist in the wind of her excuses. I told myself not to check right away. I told myself to sleep. But around 11:40 p.m., I gave in. I opened the app. The motion alert was blinking. 20 minutes after I left the house, a man walked through my front door. Hunched shoulders. Familiar jacket from her social media photos she insisted were old. He didn't knock. Didn't send a text. He entered like he lived there. They walked through the hallway together, laughing. Laughing. I watched it without blinking. Without breathing. You'd think a moment like that would crush a man. Maybe once, long ago, it would have. But something in me had already died the minute she told me I didn't get a choice in my own marriage. Watching the footage didn't hurt. Clarified. I didn't sleep much that night. But I didn't rage, didn't cry, didn't drink. I thought about every year we'd spent together. Every promise she broke long before she cheated. The stories she told her friends about how controlling I supposedly was, while she was the one who'd rewritten the rules whenever it suited her. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. My trip was supposed to last 4 days. I ended it after 1. When I walked back into the house, it smelled like coffee and her perfume. I didn't turn on any lights. I just sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, listening to the hum of our refrigerator. The same one she once decorated with pictures of us. The same one that now held wine she drank alone on the nights she claimed to work late. Around 3:17 p.m., I heard the door unlock. 2 sets of footsteps. Hers first, then his. She was laughing at something he whispered. The sound died instantly when she walked in and saw me sitting there. Her lover froze behind her, his hand still on the small of her back. And I didn't say a word. Her expression shifted slowly. Confidence sliding into confusion, then fear, then something close to fury that I was ruining her script. What are you doing here?" she managed. I looked at her the same way I did the night she declared she'd keep seeing him. Calm, steady, like I was finally seeing the truth with clean eyes. I didn't answer her question. I didn't need to, because what happened next would speak louder than anything I could say. She didn't move at first. Neither did he. They both stood there like 2 kids who'd been caught sneaking back into the house past curfew. Except this wasn't curfew. This was a marriage, and they had walked into the kitchen like it belonged to them now, like I was the intruder in my own home. She finally stepped forward, trying to regain whatever authority she thought she had left. You weren't supposed to be home until Friday," she said, her voice trembling just enough to betray the confidence she tried to wrap around herself. I didn't respond. That silence was intentional. It made her shift from foot to foot. her shoulders tensing as she glanced back at him for reassurance. He didn't offer any. He was already inching toward the door, like he was trying to calculate how quickly he could escape without looking like a coward. She snapped, "Say something. Don't just sit there." But silence was the only thing I still owed her. I'd wasted enough words on someone who didn't listen. She tried again, this time louder. "Why are you home? Did you cancel your trip? Are you spying on me?" Her voice pitched higher with each question, and he finally placed a hand on her arm as if to say, "Stop. You're making this worse." She shook him off like he was a distraction. Maybe he was. Maybe she expected me to shout, to lose control, to give her the angry husband performance she could point to later as justification. But the truth was simple. She no longer had the power to draw a reaction out of me. Not after choosing him over and over again. The man finally cleared his throat. "Hey man, I don't want any trouble." It was almost insulting how predictable that line was. Men like him always want to play bold when they're sneaking around someone else's marriage, but the second they have to face the husband, suddenly they don't want trouble. I didn't answer him either. I just watched her. She folded her arms defensively. "Fine. If you're here to start something, don't. I told you I can see him whenever I want. You don't own me." She threw those last words like they were a grenade. But the blast didn't reach me. It only echoed around her. I lifted my phone from the table, unlocked it with my thumb, and tapped the screen. The kitchen camera feed opened instantly. The timestamp glowed bright. Her lover entering 20 minutes after I had left. Her walking in right behind him. Their laughter. Their hands. The little moment where she wrapped her arms around his waist like it was something she'd practiced. I didn't angle the screen toward her. I didn't need to. The sound alone filled the room. She stiffened. He swallowed hard, glancing quickly at the doorway like he was checking the path again. She opened her mouth, but the first two attempts produced nothing. Finally she said, You put cameras in the house?" As if that was the crime. As if her betrayal somehow became my wrongdoing the moment she was caught. I resisted the urge to laugh. She always had a talent for flipping the script, bending reality until she felt like the victim. Her lover muttered, "I didn't know about that, man." I believed him. My wife had always been good at lying to both sides, pretending she had control, pretending she wasn't tearing two lives apart simultaneously. She stepped closer, desperation starting to leak into her voice. "This isn't what it looks like. We were just talking." I tapped the phone again. The next clip autoplayed. Not talking. Not even close. She reached for the phone, but I placed it flat on the table, screen up, letting the video continue playing without ever looking away from her face. She backed up 2 steps, bumping into her lover. He steadied her, but she jerked away like she didn't want to be seen depending on him now that she realized how real the consequences were. "Say something," she whispered this time, almost pleading. "Please, just say something." Her voice cracked. Maybe for the first time, she realized silence was worse than anger. Silence meant I was done. Silence meant decisions had already been made. Silence meant she no longer had influence over me. I stood up slowly. Her eyes widened. His eyes darted. But I didn't move toward them. I walked past them, calm, measured steps, into the hallway. They both turned, startled. She rushed after me. "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. I went to the living room, opened the drawer under the TV stand, and pulled out a folder I had placed there before leaving for the trip. Her face drained of color. She knew exactly what a folder meant. Her lover took a single step back. "Look, I should go," he muttered. She snapped, "Don't you dare." He froze, confused, torn between the door and her command. I placed the folder on the coffee table, opened it, and laid out the printed timestamps, the camera screenshots, and the copy of the updated divorce papers I'd drafted 2 nights earlier. She stared at them like they were weapons. Maybe they were. You can't be serious," she breathed. I finally looked her in the eye. And even then, I didn't speak. I didn't need to, because everything she feared was written right there in front of her. And this was only the beginning. She didn't touch the papers at first. She just stared at them like they were foreign objects she didn't understand. Like they belonged in someone else's life and somehow ended up in ours by mistake. Her lover kept shifting his weight behind her, torn between helping her, helping himself, and pretending he hadn't just watched footage of himself walking into another man's house like it was a weekend hobby. She finally whispered, "You already had these ready?" I kept my gaze steady. She blinked rapidly, and for the first time since she'd announced she'd keep seeing him any time she wanted, her confidence cracked. "You planned this?" Still no answer. The truth was, I hadn't planned any of it. Not until she made it clear she'd chosen him. Not just as a fling, but as a fixture in her life. I wasn't divorcing her because she cheated. I was divorcing her because she expected me to adapt to her cheating like it was a lifestyle change. Like I was supposed to be proud of her new independence. She stepped closer, lowering her voice as if speaking softly would undo what she'd done. "Look, I said things I didn't mean. I was angry. I was confused. You know how I get when I'm overwhelmed." She always had excuses ready, little emotional shields she hid behind whenever responsibility came knocking. But this wasn't about one reckless night or one harsh sentence. This was a pattern years in the making. She reached out and placed her hand on my arm, a gesture she used whenever she wanted to soften me, but I stepped back. Her hand fell like it weighed 100 pounds. Her lover saw it and finally took the opportunity he'd been waiting for. "I should really go," he said again, edging toward the doorway. She spun around, harsher than she'd intended. "You're not going anywhere." But he wasn't built for confrontation, especially not this kind. "Look, this is between you two," he stammered. "I didn't know he'd be home. I didn't sign up for—" I raised my hand slightly, not as a threat but as a calm signal. "You can leave," I said, my first words since they'd walked in. Quiet, controlled, final. The man didn't wait a single second. He slipped out the door like smoke, leaving her standing there with her jaw open, betrayed by the very person she insisted was so important to her. The silence he left behind settled heavily in the room. She turned back toward me, panic starting to flicker in her eyes. "You told him he could leave? Why would you? You made it look like this is my fault." I almost laughed. Almost. "You're acting like I forced you to cheat," I said calmly. "Or forced you to bring him into our home. Or forced you to declare he's a permanent part of your life." My voice stayed even. That only made her more frantic. "I didn't mean it like that. You're twisting things." "No," I said quietly. "For once, I'm not twisting anything. I'm laying things out exactly as they are." She ran her hand through her hair, pacing across the living room like a caged animal. "This isn't fair. You can't just ambush me like this." Ambush. As if I had lured her into her own betrayal. "You walked in with him," I reminded her. "Into our house. Without hesitation. I thought you were gone. So that makes it better?" She stopped pacing, her eyes wide, her breathing shallow. "I never wanted a divorce," she said. "You blindsiding me with papers is cruel." The irony nearly made me choke. "Cruel is bringing another man here," I said. "Cruel is telling your husband you'll keep seeing your lover and he should just deal with it like a man. Cruel is rewriting our marriage without asking if I wanted any part of your new rules." She swallowed hard, her voice cracking. "I was angry when I said that. You were honest when you said that." She covered her face with her hands. For a moment, she seemed small, like she finally saw the wreckage she had created. But remorse isn't the same as regret. And regret isn't the same as responsibility. When she lowered her hands, her expression had shifted. Less sorrow, more calculation. "We can fix this," she said. "We can go to counseling, reset boundaries, talk things out. You're being drastic." "You made the boundary," I said. "You made the rule. You made the choice." "I was testing you," she insisted, "to see if you still cared." That was the moment I realized she didn't see love as connection. She saw it as control and reaction. If I yelled, she'd say I was possessive. If I stayed quiet, she'd say I didn't care enough. If I tried to hold on, she'd say I was weak. If I let go, she'd say I was heartless. You can't win with someone who changes the scoreboard every time they lose. She took a hesitant step forward. "Let's talk like adults. Without the cameras. Without threats." "There are no threats," I said. "Just the truth." She exhaled sharply and sank onto the couch, rubbing her forehead. If you go through with this, you'll ruin everything. Our families, our friends, my reputation. Your reputation was your responsibility, I said. Not mine. She looked up at me, stunned. You're really not going to fight for this marriage? You already fought against it, I said. I'm just catching up. She stared at the divorce papers again, then back at me. She looked like she wanted to argue, but also like she already knew she'd lost something she'd never get back. And the night wasn't finished unraveling yet. She stayed on the couch, breathing hard, like the room itself had shrunk around her. I could almost see the calculations running behind her eyes, what to say, what angle to take, what emotion might work. She tried anger, denial, softness, panic. None of it landed because none of it was real. She finally settled on a quiet, trembling voice, the one she used years ago when she wanted comfort. Can you just sit with me? Please. It would have been easy to sit, easy to fall into old patterns, easy to let her tears pull me back into the cycle she mastered, break, cry, repair just enough, then break again. But I didn't sit. I stood with my hands in my pockets, grounded, steady, untouchable. No, I said calmly. We're not doing this version anymore. She flinched like the word hit her physically. You're being cold, she whispered. You're acting like I'm some stranger. You chose a stranger, I said. I'm responding accordingly. She pressed a hand to her mouth and shook her head. He's not important, I swear. I don't love him. You said he was a permanent part of your life. I didn't mean that. You lived it, I said. You brought him here. She looked down at the floor, her voice dropping to a shaky murmur. I thought you wouldn't come back. I thought you'd stay away for days like you always do. I thought I'd have time to think. You had months to think, I said. This is the result. She stood abruptly and walked toward the window like she needed distance. Then she turned sharply. Why didn't you yell at me? Why didn't you get angry? Why didn't you show anything? Because you wanted me to, I said. Because that would have made this easier for you. You'd get to paint me as unstable, jealous, controlling. Then you'd feel justified. Her eyes widened, not because she disagreed, but because she was caught. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. You don't know what I wanted, she tried. You barely see me anymore. I see you clearly now, I said. Probably for the first time. She paced again, stressed movements, hands squeezing together. We can work through this if you just tell me what you want. I want honesty, I said. I want loyalty. I want a wife who doesn't treat marriage like a hobby she picks up when she's bored. She turned away, shoulders stiff. You're not listening to me. I listened for years, I said. You're the one who stopped talking. She spun around, eyes flashing. That's not fair. You weren't present. You were always at work, always busy. I was lonely. There it was, the pivot to blame. Loneliness doesn't force someone into betrayal, I said. You had options. Communication, counseling, conversation. You chose deception. She sank back onto the couch, deflated. Then her voice softened again. A last attempt. Don't throw everything away because of one mistake. It wasn't one, I reminded her. It was every lie you told to protect him, every distance you built to hide him, every rule you rewrote to make room for him. She lifted her hands helplessly. I thought you didn't care anymore. You never reacted. You didn't fight for me. You didn't chase me. You wanted me to chase you? Yes. Why? Her lips trembled. Because then I'd know I mattered. To matter, I said, you have to behave like you do. That stunned her into silence. She swallowed, her throat tightening. I didn't mean to fall into this, she whispered. It just happened. I almost smiled at the predictability. Nothing just happens repeatedly, I said. It happens because someone keeps choosing it. She clasped her hands together. So that's it? You're giving up? No, I said. I'm accepting reality. Tears finally spilled. Not dramatic heaving sobs. Quiet tears that slid down and fell onto her hands. It was the first real emotion she'd shown since walking in with him. She looked up at me, eyes red but clear. "If you leave me," she whispered, "I'll lose everything." "You should have thought about that before risking everything," I said. "Before inviting him into our home. Before telling me he mattered more." She shook her head desperately. "I don't want him. I don't want this." "But you wanted control," I said. "And now you've lost it." "Just talk to me," she cried. "Tell me what to do to fix this." "You can't fix something you didn't respect," I said. "You didn't break a plate. You broke trust." She stood again, unsteady, wiping her face. "I'll end things with him. I'll block him. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you want." "You already ended it," I said calmly. He ran the second he realized there were consequences. She inhaled sharply, pain flickering across her features. "So, what happens now?" "Now," I said, "you face the truth." She stared at me, waiting, breath caught in her chest. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. Because the one thing she still didn't know, the thing that would hit harder than any shouting ever could, was that she hadn't just lost me. She was about to lose the life she'd built around taking me for granted. And she'd see it in a way she couldn't run from. In a way she couldn't twist into anyone else's fault. And when she finally learned the full truth, it would be in silence. My silence. She stood there waiting for me to speak, to deliver some final verdict she could brace herself against, something she could react to, fight with, bargain around. But I didn't move. I just watched her. Watched the realization settling in her bones that the script she'd rehearsed for weeks no longer applied. There was no shouting match coming. No emotional explosion she could weaponize. No dramatic scene she could twist for sympathy with her friends. Only the quiet truth she had spent months avoiding. She wiped her face again and tried to pull herself together. "Tell me what you want from me," she whispered. "Just something. Anything." "I don't want anything from you," I said. "I'm done wanting from someone who never intended to give." Her jaw tightened in a painful, involuntary twitch. She wasn't used to hearing boundaries from me. Real ones. Not half-hearted lines she could push past with an apology or a kiss or a promise she'd never planned to keep. "So the divorce is final?" she asked. "You really won't even discuss it?" "There's nothing to discuss," I said. "You ended our marriage before I filed anything." Her voice cracked. "You're walking away from 20 years together because of this? Because of the choices leading to this?" I corrected. "Because you stopped being my partner long before you started being his." She stumbled back a step, as if the air had been punched out of her. "I never thought you'd leave," she said. "I thought, I don't know, you'd forgive me." "Forgiveness isn't a reset button," I said. "It doesn't erase patterns." She pressed her palms to her forehead. "I never wanted to hurt you. But you did," I said. "And then you did it again, and again. And then you told me to accept it." She sank into the couch again, shoulders curling in. "I was scared," she said softly. "Of what?" "Of losing control. Of feeling invisible. Of not being wanted." "So you went to someone who made you feel powerful," I said. "Someone who didn't know your flaws. Someone who didn't ask anything real from you." She didn't deny it. Silence stretched between us, long and heavy. She finally broke it with a shaky breath. "I don't want to lose our home," she said. "I don't want to lose everything we built." "You should have thought of that before bringing him into it," I replied. "Before letting him become part of the place we built together." Her voice turned desperate. "Tell me what to do. Please, there has to be something." "There's honesty," I said. "That's all that's left." She frowned, confused. "Honesty about what?" "I already told you." "Not with me," I said. "With everyone else." She went pale. "What do you mean?" I picked up the folder, slid a smaller envelope from inside, and placed it on the table. She stared at it like it was radioactive. "What's that?" "Your statements," I said. "Your timeline. Your explanation." "For who?" "Your family," I said. "Your friends. The ones you told I was distant, controlling, neglectful." Her face flashed with embarrassment, fear, and anger all at once. "You can't make me tell them," I'm not making you do anything, I said. But if you want any grace, any understanding, any chance to rebuild your life without living in lies, you'll tell the truth. You want me to humiliate myself? I want you to take responsibility, I said. For real. Not the apologetic version you use when you're scared. The truth. She shook her head violently. I can't. They'll judge me. They'll hate me. They'll know you, I said. Maybe for the first time. She stared at me for a long moment. And if I do this? If I tell them everything, what do you do? I still leave, I said. This isn't a negotiation. But you won't have to spend the next 10 years lying about who ruined what. Tears rolled again, this time not to manipulate, not to bargain, but because the illusion she built around her life had finally collapsed. So that's it, she whispered. You're gone. I've been gone, I said. Today you just saw it. She looked at the divorce papers again, then at the envelope, then at me. She wasn't asking for permission anymore. She wasn't pleading for a second chance. She was finally seeing the world without the filters she'd used to survive her own choices. Will you at least say goodbye? She whispered. I walked to the doorway, paused, and looked back at her. Sitting small, shaking, surrounded by the weight of her decisions. Goodbye, I said quietly. Then I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and felt the first breath of peace I'd taken in years. No shouting, no chaos, no drama. Just a silence she created, and a silence I finally learned to accept. If you want more stories like this, subscribe for more.